Hello, welcome and good evening, everyone. Welcome to Candidate Conversations live here at The Source in downtown Mansfield. My name is Leah Gasouris. I am the head of community investment here at Richland Source, and I am your host tonight as we speak with candidates for public office here in Richland County. We are so grateful to see so many people in person tonight and also online. Hello, online. This event is being live streamed through the Richland Source Facebook page and YouTube channel. You'll be able to watch the playback when we're all finished tonight as well. We'll make sure that you get a copy of that as well. Thank you to everyone who is joining us tonight, wherever you are. I also want to thank the North End Community Improvement in Collaboration, or how I like to say it, NECIC, for understanding the importance of local election coverage and sponsoring our work during this election cycle, including all of our pre-election content currently on our website at richlandsource.com. All right, so this is a huge election across the country this year. In 2024, we will elect a new president, a new Congress and Senate. Lots of big choices to make. But we also have crucial decisions to make here in Richland County with some significant contested races. Residents have choices to make for the state Senate and the state House. They will also vote on a seat for the Richland County Board of Commissioners and also decide on the county clerk of courts. It's a lot of tongue twisters. Did you write this?
I certainly did, and I twisted over every one of them.
And I'm doing a great job, I know. We've invited all the candidates in those races to join us here tonight. We want to make that very clear. What we also want to make clear is that these are conversations, not debates. There are no buzzers, no opening statements, or timed rebuttals. This is a conversation. This is simply a time for you to learn more and listen about the men and women who would like your vote on November 5th. We will not be taking questions from the audience, though everyone was invited to submit questions in advance, and we have reviewed those questions. Also, you're invited to join us in the back for a reception after the final conversation of the night. We have drinks, a lovely charcuterie board by our education reporter, Katie. I give you a shout out. It's fabulous. So take the opportunity to unwind for what will be an informative evening tonight. With that, let's get started with our first conversation of the night, and I will hand things over to Richland Source City Editor Extraordinaire, Carl Hunnell.
Well, thank you very much, Leah, and good evening, everybody. I feel like I should go back to my Southern Baptist root days and be the preacher and say, if you're sitting in the back, come on down front. But yeah, we're kind of spread out, but that's okay. Hey, this all kind of feels like the Newsman Weekly podcast, except we are live and there's more people in the room. So thank you all for coming. You know, I'm going to show my age again. Vin Scully was one of my favorite old-time baseball announcers. Used to do the Los Angeles Dodgers, and I can remember watching games that he was broadcasting, and one of the things he would say early in the game is, pull up a chair, everybody, we're just getting started. Well, that's kind of where we're at, same with us tonight. Now, I always like to say this at the beginning of these things. Lots of people complain about lots of things, and I mean lots of things. Social media is a wonderful place if you want to go and see people complain. But damn few people put their hats in the ring and are willing to run for public office to effect positive change. I got utmost respect for every candidate that we're going to speak with tonight. It's tough to run for public office, and I want to thank every one of them for being willing to step forward, win or lose. Thank you very much, and I'm going to ask you to join me in applauding anybody willing to run for public office. We are going to start tonight with the race for Richland County Clerk of Courts. If you want to do some research, the powers and duties of a county clerk of courts are spelled out in section 1907.20 of the Ohio Revised Code. There will be a quiz later, so please take notes. I love to look at the Ohio Revised Code. It gives me something to do. Put simply, the clerk of courts is responsible for accurately maintaining and safeguarding court records, criminal and civil, collecting and dispersing public funds, while also promoting equal access, fairness, and transparency. There's a lot more to the code about the job. Lawmakers, turn your ears off for a second, Marilyn. Lawmakers love to write lengthy bits of stuff. So that's a distillation. But given technology today, clerk of courts is a huge job and one you may not notice a great deal unless and until you're the one who needs those records, and then you'll hope the clerk of courts is doing their job. I am joined now by Chris Adams, the Democratic Party nominee for Richland County Clerk of Courts. Thank you for being here, Chris.
Thank you for having me.
His opponent, current Clerk of Courts Denise Rule, was out of town this week, unable to be here with us. She is a Republican. She was appointed last year to complete an unexpired term, and she's now seeking to retain her seat. She is a Clear Fork High School graduate. She's been in the Clerk of Courts office, I think, 31 years. She did tell me she hopes to keep doing a job that she loves. But right now, let's dive in and learn more about Chris Adams. So Chris, tell us about yourself. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? What are your hobbies, interests? Help us know Chris Adams tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. First, I'd like to thank everybody for receiving me. It's been a very interesting journey in this campaign. I first came to Mansfield in 2010 after receiving a phone call to come down and be a captain in the prison system at Richland Correctional. I have 31 years of law enforcement and corrections experience, and I also worked for the state auditor's office. While at the auditor's office, that's when I first got the thirst for wanting to do more for the community and to really see how I could help in maintaining that everything's kept above board and that everybody was heard. After leaving the auditor's office, I went to Lorain County Sheriff's Department, where I first found out my taste for the political aspect. That year, the levy didn't pass in Lorain County for the sheriffs. And come to find out, a new prison in Lorain County at Lorain Correctional. I was an officer at Lorain Correctional for 8 years and strived to do more in that area. I applied for promotions and was promoted to lieutenant, skipping the rank of sergeant, and went to lieutenant at Ohio's only Supermax prison in Youngstown. Once in Youngstown, I stayed there for 8 years, was commander of the special response team there, did a lot with the local communities there. When you first put an institution into an area, you have to also recruit so many people from that area to work in the department. It's part of the give and take with the department for being in those areas. Got to know a lot of people there, made a lot of friends, and at that time I got called back to Lorain County where I was needed to go to Grafton Correctional. Transferred laterally as lieutenant at Grafton Correctional. The state mental health board had decided that state hospitals were no longer an issue, which put a lot of the mentally ill into the corrections institutes. So the Department of Corrections had to make a policy to govern those inmates with special needs, mental health needs, and each institution was then given a unit for the mentally needy inmates to receive the treatment that they needed. And I also that at Grafton Correctional. And like I said, in 2010, I got the call to come to Mansfield. The reason I got that call, they had a gang problem at Richland Correctional with the heartless felons, and they were having problems with people throwing drugs over the fences. They promoted me to shift captain to take on this task, and I finished up my last 10 years in corrections as shift captain at Richland Correctional, and we did a good job of getting everything straight there, making improvements, and modernizing the institution to keep up with the times as far as the drones coming over and different unseen ways that they were getting the drugs into the institution.
I know when I looked at your background, and I did note when I read through it about all the law enforcement correctional experience, how is that going to translate for you into the clerk of courts role if you win the election? How do those two kind of come together?
Well, out of my 31 years, I was a supervisor for 22 years. You are only as good as the people that work for you. And once I started learning about the clerk of courts and how things were being run, due to vicarious liability, a supervisor is responsible for the actions of those underneath them. So I would bring to the clerk's office, I'm not just sitting behind the desk, but I'm not looking over anyone's shoulder either. I'm going to put people that are conscious and wary of doing the job that they're assigned to do, and don't let complacency take over.
Technology is obviously an ever-changing thing in today's world. When I started as a reporter in 1979, we were still using electric typewriters. Obviously, technology has changed that. I remember going up in the old days to go to the clerk of court's office, digging through giant musty volumes of stuff with page after page of handwritten documents. Obviously, that's all changed. So how have you adapted to technology in your own work, and what do you know about the technology that they're using in the clerk of court's office today?
Well, like you said, back in the old days when we started, we had files about 7 inches thick, page by page, tediously going through it. But doing it the old-fashioned way back then homed you in to pay more attention to detail. And with the way that technology is here, you have to get it right the first time. There's no room for error, so you have to pay attention to detail. Like the public request for records. The clerk's office is responsible for getting those out to the public once a request is made. But instead of making copies of those papers or letting them actually sit down with the files and overlook the papers, I'd have those records put onto a thumb drive. That way you wouldn't have any discredit to everything being returned to you, everything be above board, open for the public. They could take it, review it at their leisure, and that way we wouldn't have to make paper copies, accrue expense for that. One quick thumb drive and you're out the door.
Right. Now, the clerk of courts manages a fairly large staff. I think there's 15 people in the clerk's office at the courthouse, another 11 in the auto title office. You talked a little bit about your management style. How will that translate from managing a correction staff to managing a group of folks working in the clerk's office?
Well, one thing you have to do with any people that you're supervising, you have to be firm, fair, and consistent. There's not going to be any surprises. Everything's going to be above board and out in the open. Having a good working relationship, the people that you supervise aren't going to make you be a supervisor. They will have enough respect for you to do the job that they're assigned. So I mostly count on a good working relationship with my employees.
All right. Chris, think back to your childhood or even your teenage years. What are the primary or the early life events that have helped shape your views of the world today?
Well, I grew up in Elyria in Lorain County. My mother was the president of the Elyria branch NAACP for 25 years. And with her being in the NAACP, she was also very politically savvy. And as a kid, I went to every dinner, every event. It wasn't a question. It was get your coat and let's go. And looking back on that, I appreciate it because it made me able to see what happens in the political world as much as seeing what the needs of different people are, because the NAACP addresses the issues of the advancement of colored people. All people have color, and so all people that need help, they're there for, and that's what I learned by dealing with the NAACP in that aspect.
All right. You're running as a Democrat for a countywide elective office in a county of about 80,000 registered voters. It's a county where registered Republicans outnumber Democrats by about a 4-to-1 margin. What would you want Republicans and the massive group of independents to know about you that they may not know at this point?
The main thing to know about me is in the role of clerk of courts, they're governed by the Ohio Revised Code. Going into this office, I'm like a blank canvas that can be molded and bring about exactly what the clerk's office is supposed to be about. Like I said, firm, fair, and consistent, transparency, and most up-to-date services that will be at my disposal.
Now, you ran for election last year, I believe, as a Madison Township trustee.
Yes.
What did you learn during that campaign that's helped you this time around?
Well, the way I got into running for that trustee office was a barbecue. I had some friends over at the house, born and raised here in Richland County, and they were telling me about their needs, their concerns, and someone needs to do something. And we talked about it. A couple of days later, I was on my way home, and I passed by the Board of Elections. And I turned in, and I'm like, I'm going to be the person that does something about it. Did not know hardly anything about running for any public office. It was trial and error and bumping my head. But when you bump your head, you got to learn something. And running for that office, even though I didn't win, I met a lot of people, I learned a lot, and I came way better for it.
All right. Now, if you were the average voter, and assuming you haven't voted already, because we all know early voting has started, why would you choose yourself over Denise Rule on November 5th?
Well, my opponent has 31 years' experience in the court office of Richland County. And every now and then you need some change. You need a different outlook on something. If you ever have had a task that you've been looking at for a while and you have to step back and get a fresh set of eyes on it because you just can't focus on that anymore, I'm trying to be that fresh set of eyes for the county clerk's office.
All right. If your opponent was here, this would be the time I would offer each of you an opportunity to kind of offer a final message to voters. So this is your chance. What do you want to tell voters tonight that I haven't already asked you about? This is your chance.
Well, running for the clerk's office, it's not an office that is specifically deemed a Republican, a Democrat, an independent. It's the person that can do the job. It's the person that looks at the job and will approach it fairly and honestly. I'm sure that my opponent has done her best, but at this time, this year, I think it's time for a change, and the change that's coming is one that I can make.
All right, and that will conclude our first conversation of the night. Many thanks to Chris Adams for joining us tonight, spending time and giving us his thoughts on what he would do if elected as the next Richland County Clerk of Courts. And with that, I'll toss it, oh, sorry, yes?
Thank you.
I can't clap, it makes a big noise. With that, I'll toss it back to Leah while we get ready for our next conversation, which will feature the two candidates for the Richland County Board of Commissioners. County Commissioner Darrell Banks and his Democratic challenger, Reverend Aaron Williams. Good evening to both of you, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, back to the Ohio Revised Code. The role of a county commissioner is spelled out in Chapter 307 of the Revised Code. I think it may also be misunderstood by a lot of people. A county commissioner doesn't make laws like a city council member or village council member. It's largely an administrative body. Elected to 4-year terms, county commissioners set the strategic direction and fiscal priorities for the county. They serve as the budget and appropriating authority for all county government, including county agencies and elected officials. I think the Richland County General Fund budget in 2023 was about $42 million, give or take. So let's start with the same question for both of you. Tell us about yourselves, where you grew up, where you went to school, your work experiences, hobbies, interests, whatever you'd like to do. And Aaron, we'll let you go first.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you all for having this forum and this opportunity. I thank Mr. Banks for coming as well. I find him to be a gentleman, and I appreciate him. I would like to let you know, introduce myself. I am Aaron Williams. I actually went to school in Ontario, moved here from New Jersey in 1979. My father was a pastor and founded a church there in Orange, New Jersey. But my mother grew up here. This was her home. And we came back upon the request of my mother's former pastor after he had deceased. He wanted my father to take over that church. And so for 26 years, my father pastored 2 churches 500 miles away from one another. We moved here, and he took care of both places. In 2003, he stopped doing that and just took care of the Maddox Memorial Church. Shout out, Maddox. And in 2016, I became the pastor, very proud pastor of the Maddox Memorial Church of God in Christ, located at 1148 Walker Lake Road in Mansfield, Ohio. Just want to let you know. Very happy to be the servant of that ministry. As I said, I went to school in Ontario, graduated from there, and then we joined the military. After a couple years of school, we joined the military. It was relatively quiet in the world, I thought, at the time. I went in for a job, and then a few months after I joined, Saddam Hussein went into Kuwait and messed up some things there. And so a few months later, we were in the Gulf War, Desert Storm and Desert Shield. So I'm a proud service member during that era as well. And then came out of that and came back home, started a family, worked in the medical field, and worked at Med Central, and then also worked in the school systems. I currently work in the school systems as well as ministry. I have all of those things. What they have in common is service. I've served in the military, served my country, I served my community, I serve as a mentor to young people, and serve in ministry, and I serve in the schools. I just serve. And so just offering myself up as a servant.
All right, thank you. Daryl, your turn.
Okay, I'm Daryl Banks. My family has been in Richland County since before the Civil War. I am a graduate, actually the 3rd class from Clear Fork High School. And after Clear Fork, I went to Iowa State Cyclones and got a degree in food service management. And then I went into the Army from 69 to 72, come back to work in my family's restaurant, Sandar Smorgasbord. I am the Dar of Sandar. And I came back to work there for 1 year while my dad was president of the Ohio Restaurant Association, and fell in love with Richland County again and the village of Belleville, and decided we wanted to raise our children there. My wife and I just celebrated our 57th wedding anniversary, and we have 2 children, and I have 3 redheaded grandchildren, and they're all doing great. They're in their 20s. After working at the Sandar for a number of years, about over 20, I became a vocational educator, teaching marketing and travel and tourism at the Knox County Career Center. And at the same time, my wife and I had a tour company, Sandar Hospitality. And back in '75, my dad and I built Sandar Acres Golf Course, an executive golf course located in Belleville, now called Little Apple. So I have very much a variety of experiences. And I used that to become the mayor of Belleville, and I was elected for 3 terms, and now 2 terms as county commissioner. I think my experience is wide, vast in a number of areas, and I think it helped me to prepare myself to be a county commissioner.
Well, thank you. This time we'll start back with you, Daryl. As you mentioned, it was a good segue. You're seeking a 3rd term in office, which means you've been a commissioner now for almost 8 years. So what 1 or 2 things are you most proud of during your tenure in office? And what has been the biggest challenge that you haven't been able yet to overcome? The one thing you kind of hope to get done in the next 4 years?
Well, I think one of the best things that we've done, and it's been done with 4 commissioners, the 3 that are currently serving, and Marilyn John when she was a county commissioner, and that is getting the finances under control and preparing for the future with the finances. We have passed a balanced budget every year, and that's a real balanced budget, we do not use our funds from the carryover or from our capital improvements or our rainy day fund. And we've set up a couple different policies that help contribute to the rainy day fund in the future, as well as putting money in capital funds. And I think another thing that we've done is working with the capital funds. We're investing very much in our assets that are owned by the Richland County taxpayers. We're investing in a 1968, the building was built, the Richland County Administration Building, and we're putting money back into that so that it will last for a long time. We've got new clerk of courts office. We've put money in the elevators. We've put money into fixing up the building, keeping it, and I think those are good assets. We've put money into 911. They were in a very poor building, poor room, and with a lot of problems. We have a new 911 center. We've built a couple of Marks Towers. We've invested and will continue to invest into the future of the county. I think the last part of that question is what I intend to do.
Yeah, what's been the biggest challenge that you maybe haven't been able to overcome yet?
Well, getting a balanced budget is not a challenge that you get done in 1 year. It's a challenge every year. And we are receiving the budget from our different departments and other elected officials, and they're coming in now and taking a look at that. I think maybe our one of the biggest challenges for the next few months is going to be to balance that budget again. But the 3 of us will get it done. And finding good people to get the job done. I think everybody that's in business right now, everybody that's involved is finding the right people. And we have a lot of good people. Some of them will be retiring. And but finding good people is always a challenge.
All right. Aaron, this one's going to be for you. As you mentioned, you've been a local church pastor, following your father's footsteps. You've worked in the city schools, other places. This is the first time you've run for public office. So what prompted your decision to enter this race? What made you say, you know what, it's time for me to get in the game here?
Actually, and thank you, Carl, for the question. Once again, I have somewhat of some background with dealing with young people, and they are quite naturally close to my heart. I have 3 daughters myself and a new grandfather, and I'm very fond of the future as it would be. My father used to say when he pastored that a church without young people is doomed. And so, not just a church, but a community without young people. And so I was initially asked to have a talk at the Women's Caucus in 2023 pertaining to the gun violence that was going on in our community. And afterwards, the question was raised, would you be interested in running for office? And absolutely not. It's not in my purview, not something I was thinking of. Pastoring has become something that I really enjoy. I really enjoy serving people and serving God's people. And so it was something that I really wasn't interested in. However, that question stuck in my head, actually. And throughout that summer and into the fall, I had that in my head, if you will, until someone asked me once again if I would consider running for office. I said no at the time, but then once again I thought about it, and some things started happening, or were happening some more, and something that really triggered my yes was around this time last year. There was an incident in our community. Many people know about it, and some lives were lost. And in this community, in our city, we have an urban element, but Mansfield is still small. And so when something tragic happens, it affects almost everyone, if not everyone. And I was mentoring a young man. I still see him. We talk and we chat. But I saw him the next day after the incident, and I asked him what was wrong because he looked pretty sad, very sad. He was always a bubbly young man, and he said that he lost a friend of his best friend. And I knew the young man, and it touched me deeply. And so I felt that I was looking for something from our leadership, if you will, with regard to our young people. As you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about it. The lives of our young people is paramount. We can invest in buildings, we can invest in property, we can invest in more money, but the best investment we could ever make is an investment in our future, which is our youth. And so with that in mind, when I was asked to run for this office, I asked the question in turn, how can I make a difference in this position? And then the answer came, anywhere I put my attention to. And so I started doing some more homework, and if you will, and looking into things and seeing that the current commissioners have done a bumper job in balancing the budget and taking care of taxpayers' money, if you will. And I can appreciate that, living and being a taxpayer in Richland County. But there are some areas that I think that if I had the opportunity, that I would see if we can put some attention to, and things that, and I've heard from other past commissioners that said, that's not something that we as commissioners do. However, that's interesting that you think like that. And so that's what got me into wanting to run for this position.
All right, Aaron, we'll stay with you for just one more second. It's the same question I had a few minutes ago for Chris Adams. You're running as a Democrat in a county that's about 4-1 Republican, and most people are independents. But what do you want Republicans and independents to know about you that they may not know today?
First of all, nowhere did I say that I was a Democrat. I am running under the Democratic ticket. I am registered as a Democrat. However, growing up in my mother and father's house, we didn't really talk about our politics, if you will, or inform people about how we were voting. Instead, we educated ourselves on issues and individuals. And people who spoke to us, regardless of their party affiliation, who spoke to us, that's more than likely how my parents, for instance, leaned. They never told me necessarily who they voted for. And so I'm not discounting the Democratic Party at all. It's a vast party, it's very diverse, which is something that I can appreciate, because the diversity, within the diversity, you have some people who are way over to the left and you have some people who are way over to the right, even in the Democratic Party, and they're still under the one umbrella. They can conversate, they can have discussions about their agreements and their differences. What I would like people to know about me is that I care about people. I don't care about party. I don't let a party define who I am or define my religious beliefs. I like to have my life define everything. How I am and how I treat people and how I treat people in front of other people should be the definitive factor in how you judge Aaron Williams. And so you won't have to worry about me mistreating you because you have an R behind your name. That means nothing to me. I look at who you are as an individual.
Daryl, a similar question that I just asked of Aaron. What would you want the Democrats to know about you that they may not already know?
Well, I would want them to know that I make decisions based on facts and on the process of finding out a solution to the problem, finding out and defining what that problem is. Once it's find out what the problem is, then I come up with all the different solutions that may help solve that problem. And you come up with those solutions, you find out, well, if we did that, what would happen? And with that, picking out the best solution, then go ahead and go through with it, and then go back afterwards and evaluate that. And I think I have done that with decision-making, problem-solving, and finding the right. It's not just a matter of making a decision, but researching the facts, trying to solve which is going to help the most, do the best job, and then once you make that decision, implement it, and go back and evaluate it.
All right, we'll stay with you, Daryl. As you mentioned, the current Board of Commissioners has a policy, I think, that requires the three of you to approve a balanced budget. I think that's your own policy.
That is correct.
Yep. Which means you won't appropriate more than you estimate in revenue each year. Over the last few years, the county has built up a surplus. I think at the end of 2023, there was $12.7 million in capital, almost $7 million in a rainy day fund. But you've got some departments, and I can think of one, the prosecutor's office, that ask for more funds than they usually get. Is there a way, in your mind, to meet all of the needs of elected officials and the various agencies, even if it means appropriating more than expected revenue in a year, if you've got a special need that you really want to address for that 1 year? I mean, is there a way around your own policy, the board's own policy, about we will never appropriate more than we take in?
I think if there was an emergency situation, I think we would find a way around those policies. on a temporary basis. And again, it's not something I would do lightly, because I know that if somebody asked me for $97,000 more, if I was lightly give them $97,000, tomorrow they'd want $100,000. But we do, and you mentioned some of the departments we had. I'll give you an example, the dog pound. The dog warden is supposed to be sufficient, not asking for general fund dollars. Last year, we gave them $60,000 because they had an excessive amount of dogs the last couple of years, and their budget wasn't doing the job. They were doing the job the best they could, but we knew to do a better job, we needed to give them more money. So we gave him $60,000. I would say that we probably are going to have to do, maybe not to that amount, but something this year to take care of that. And we have policies that we intend to go by, but I'm not saying that we're not flexible enough to take a look at them.
Right. Aaron, one of the things you've talked about in your campaign and again tonight is working with local youth. That seems something that would come naturally as a church pastor or a school employee. But I think you yourself mentioned this. As a county commissioner, what specific steps would you take to interact with and improve conditions for local youth? And how does that tie into a county commissioner role, which is overseeing county government and expenditures and revenues and things like that? How do those two come together?
So I appreciate the question, because once again, in my conversations with a couple former commissioners, they had mentioned my desire to explore some things regarding our young people, and they thought it was, well, it's something that we don't do as commissioners, but I don't see a problem with seeing or meeting with or visiting some of our young people who are in the juvenile jail, the juvenile court over on Diamond Street, visiting them and seeing what are some of their dreams and aspirations, what are the issues that have gotten them where they are at that current time, and maybe possibly looking at how we can move away from that and be a positive role model in the community for them. Same with our jail system. I've been to Richland County Jail. I've visited inmates there. I visited inmates at the juvenile center. And I visited a young man who was a student of mine over at Hedges some years ago. And the young man had no one. His mother had just been murdered a couple months prior to. And his father was actually being looked for by the police, and they had found him and had a shootout with him, and he passed away from that shootout. Well, they had arrested this young man because he may have held or may have housed his father prior to them finding him. Well, I went to see him because he had no one else, and he had no idea that I was coming to see him. And to see his face light up, not understanding what was happening to him, and the situation said everything. He appreciated that. We don't know what some of our young people are going through. There are homeless young people in our community. Probably don't know that. If we go home to our houses, our comfortable places of dwellings, there may be some children who are trying to find somewhere to sleep tonight here in our little city of Mansfield. Not to mention other areas in Richland County. And I believe that if I could bring some attention to that, I understand there are guidelines to how we disperse funding. I understand that there has to be a balanced budget, and there's no way I'm going to be a salty dog on any of that. I want to make sure that those things get done, primarily because if we can, and there is some way that we can invest into our young people, something that is unconventional, something that has never really been done, something that nobody thinks that a commissioner would do or has ever done in the past, why not try it? Why not try it? As a pastor, we had issues financially several years ago, before I was a pastor, actually. And we came together, and a team of us within the church, my father being the pastor at the time, and we came together. I was also a trustee. And so we worked together at making sure that things went smoothly, and we got back on track financially. Now we are on a better track financially, and we've been able to do some things over the last 8 years. We've purchased 2 boilers, $5,000 each. We had our parking lot blacktopped and paved. We bought a $27,000 air conditioning unit. We did this just off of the gifting and the benevolence of the members of our small membership, okay? And so we don't go around just spending money haplessly. And so I don't believe in that. I believe in taking care of a balanced budget, doing things properly. But when we are able to, when we have an opportunity to invest in our young people, why not do it?
All right, I've got a question for both of you, and Daryl, we'll let you go first. We talked about you've got a healthy capital budget in hand. What specific projects would you like to see the county undertake in the next 4 years with that capital budget, and why?
Well, we will be soon having a bid opening for inside the, again, it's in the administration building. It is doing all the restrooms, doing the 4th courtroom, and doing the makeup of all the other corridors. And that's one thing that we'll be doing very soon. We want to expand broadband. Right now, there's broadband is coming across Route 30, and we joined in that project. It's going to help the Air Force Base so that the security out there will have much better broadband. And by coming right across 30, it should help the north end of Mansfield as well as the rural areas outside to get much better broadband than we have right now, much better internet than we have now. So that's a couple of things. We also want to do, safety is an issue. And the jail is in pretty good shape, but working with the Sheriff's Department, working in cooperation with the Mansfield City Police and others, certainly we want to do a better job of protecting our citizens.
Same question for you, Aaron. You got a capital budget of about $12 million at least coming into this year. What sorts of capital investments specifically would you like to see made in the next 4 years?
I would like to, it's probably crazy, and I don't know if this is the exact thing. I appreciate the investment in improving our buildings, our streets, roadways, and all of that. I don't think, once again, and I may be beating a dead horse, but none of that matters if you don't have anybody to occupy it or use it in the future. If we're not preparing them, helping to prepare our young people for being the leaders of our community, and maybe even attracting other young people to our community. I would like to, there's not a lot for our young people to do in the summertime, and we fear summertime coming on because we don't know what our young people are going to do. At the school I work at now, Malabar, I was working with the initiative, the Peace on My Block initiative, that our superintendent, Stan Jefferson, had initiated. And I was working with the principal, Mr. Tom Hager, and some other staff on last year. We were working together, and we're doing it again this year, working together to provide something for the young people, especially the ones who maybe have been identified a little bit at risk or having issues with some things, coping mechanisms. And so this past year, or this year in May, we had an outing at the Arlen Field. And there were all kinds of games and things to do. It was a nice fair, and they ended it off with some fireworks. We would like to, I think, putting some money into something county funded or in collaboration that would be an attraction for our young people. The soccer complex is beautiful. Why not a pool? Why not something that is just a youth center that may even be sponsored or helped to be purchased or operated by the county? I don't know, but I would love for something that is youth-centered, future-minded to come forth out of that. And like I said, an investment in our young people, you can never go wrong on that.
Another question for both of you. Richland County, like all other counties, municipalities, villages, has benefited from American Rescue Plan Act funds. I think Richland County got $23 million over the last 3 years. By the time one of you takes office in January, Darrell, whether you're being reelected, or Aaron, whether you get elected, that money is all going to have been allocated because it has to be appropriated by the end of this year. So did the Board of Commissioners do a good job of spending that money? Darrell, I know you're only one vote of 3, so are you in agreement with what was done during the last 3 years? And if not, where would you have liked to have seen money spent that maybe didn't get spent in that way? And Aaron, you go first this time.
I'll just say that there are places where I would have liked to see that money, some of that money at least, be invested in. And once again, it was in community. It was in building up in the safety. I personally, along with some other clergy, had requested some of those finances to help with to combat in some way some of the plight of violence that has been going on. And we were unable to secure anything through the county. They kindly suggested some other avenues, and but I would have liked to see if there was some way that we could have secured some finance to be able to invest And once again, everything I talk about has nothing to do about putting in any one or two people's pockets. It's all about investing in the communities that we serve. And so not just in the city of Mansfield, but in some of these other smaller communities that make up this beautiful, diverse county. Richland County is getting more and more diverse. There are peoples here now that we didn't used to have, and it's just becoming a beautiful, beautifully diverse county. And we don't have that many people here, but it is from farmlands to small communities to a representation of an urban element here in Mansfield. It's getting to be very diverse, much more than when I first moved here 40 plus years ago. So I would have liked to see it go to a couple different places. Yes, thank you.
Similar type question, Daryl. I mean, I've attended the meetings, I've watched decisions that the commissioners make. What do you think you're most proud of in terms of ARPA? And is there anything that you would have changed?
Well, given the rules, ARPA was just not a blank check of 23 million and you put it wherever you went to. We had many rules that we had to follow. Based on the rules that we had to follow, based on the amount of money and the needs, I stand behind what we decided to do. And I wouldn't have changed anything after looking at the facts, after looking at the different things that the people needed. And I'm very happy to say that what we invested it in, unlike some people spending their ARPA money, are things that are going to be here for decades, most of the things will be here for decades, and they are going to serve the taxpayers and save them money down the road on needs that will not be needed in decades because we maintain things. And so I'll stand behind what we spent it on.
All right, well, we've come to the point for kind of closing arguments. I want each of you to take just a minute and tell the folks sitting in the audience and online why you deserve their vote on November 5th. And Daryl, you go first this time.
Well, first of all, I'm asking for your vote. I would appreciate your vote. And the reason is the experience I've had in my many years of life in working in business and working in the public sector, the private sector, Mayor of Belleville, County Commissioner for 8 years. There's a lot of experience that I have, and I think you can look and see what has happened in the last 8 years that with the 4 commissioners you've had during that time. And I believe that if you look at that closely, you will say, these 4 commissioners did a good job for Richland County, and let's keep them doing that job. Thank you.
Aaron, you get the last word here.
I would like to ask for your vote to bring light to the commissioner's office. Many people don't know who their commissioners are. It's not the most visible office, but I would like to be able to represent Richland County as a whole, not just one city or one community, but Richland County as a whole, and to bring light to a very important body of government within our communities, and hopefully share the integrity that has gone on throughout the years. And I appreciate Mr. Banks and everything that he has done along with his colleagues up until now. Thank you, sir.
All right, and with that, we've come to the end of our conversation with 2 candidates for the Richland County Board of Commissioners. I want to thank Daryl Banks and Reverend Aaron Williams for joining us tonight and spending time giving us their thoughts on what they would do if elected on November 5th. And with that, I'll toss it back to Leah while we get ready for the next conversation, which will have candidates for the Ohio House 76 District, which represents Richland County. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leah. Joining us now are two of the three candidates who would like to represent Richland County in the Ohio House of Representatives. Seated with me now are incumbent Republican State Representative Marilyn John and write-in candidate Timothy Grady, who's an independent candidate. I was informed late this afternoon that Democratic challenger Emily Adams had fallen ill and will not be able to join us. So unfortunately, she won't be here, but we will mush along. Welcome to both of you, and thank you for being here tonight.
Thanks, Carl.
Similar to as we've done earlier, I'd like to start by offering both of you a chance to introduce yourself and take a couple of minutes and tell folks in Richland County what you're about. And Tim, we'll start with you.
All right, thanks. Hi, I'm Tim Grady, and I'm going to reiterate that a couple of times because I am a write-in candidate, so you have to remember my name if you want to vote for me. You don't have to remember all of it. Tim will do. Probably T.I. will also get you most of the way there. But I am independent, unaffiliated. My background, I have degrees in computer science, economics. I'm currently a graduate student at the Ohio State University in a Master's of Public Administration.
Sorry
I
about that.
do enjoy music. I'm a big music fan.
Big music fan. We're music fans.
There we go.
I have previously worked as an anti-money laundering analyst, which was slightly a career slightly inspired by my previous involvement in politics. I want to say that I'm, again, independent, unaffiliated in this race, but I am also a member of the Forward Party, which is a new political party growing across Ohio and the United States, founded by former Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang, former Republican governor of New Jersey Christine Todd Whitman, and many others from across the political spectrum. So I am inspired to run because of that party. I am in no way endorsed or affiliated by that party. I have to make that clear. But I do want to bring new political ideas and new choices to our elections. I also want to say I am not running against Marilyn John. I'm not running against Emily Adams. I'm just running to promote ideas and bring, a different voice to politics. Thanks.
Marilyn, introduce yourself to Richland County.
Well, thanks for having us tonight. Thank you to the Source for hosting the candidate event. I am Marilyn John. I am your state representative here in Richland County. I grew up here in the northern part of the county, just north of Shelby. Actually graduated from Plymouth High School and went on to North Central State College here locally as well. Graduated from Ashland University with a degree in marketing and business management. I went to work at the Shelby Insurance Company, if anybody remembers the insurance company. They were located where the Kehoe Center is now, and that was my first job out of college. I was a commercial lines underwriter there in the insurance industry. During that time, I met a Shelby boy, and this coming Monday, we will celebrate 29 years together, so happy anniversary to him. We have 2 children, and I actually stayed home with our children when they were little and until they started elementary school. And then after that, I became the executive director of the Shelby Senior Center. We had a new building that we were opening up in Shelby, and that process spurred me to get involved in politics. I've always been interested in politics, and so I ran for mayor of the city of Shelby, and I was mayor from 2010 to until I took office as a Richland County Commissioner. I took office in January of 2015 as Richland County Commissioner, worked closely with Daryl and Tony for 6 years, and then I ran for the State House, and I have been proud to represent you in the Ohio House of Representatives for the last 4 years.
Thank you. Let's go to a question for both of you. could directly impact how boundaries are drawn for the state's legislative and congressional districts. Talking, of course, about State Issue 1, that's on the ballot this cycle. I'd like each of you to offer your views on Issue 1 and explain why you do or don't support it, why you think it's a good idea or why it's a bad idea. Marilyn, you go first this time.
Sure. So issue 1 will do away with the current constitutional amendments that were passed here in the state of Ohio, that were passed overwhelmingly by the voters in the state of Ohio. The purpose of those amendments was to end gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is when maps are drawn to benefit a specific political party. And so the constitutional amendments that, again, were overwhelmingly passed by the voters of the state of Ohio, that was the purpose of those amendments. And I don't think that we should be doing away with those amendments. They were largely supported. It put in place a 7-member commission made up of elected officials that are accountable to the voters. And it is a bipartisan commission made up of statewide elected officials as well as members of the majority and minority parties in the House and Senate. This new amendment that's on the ballot will do away with all of that and will require gerrymandering in order to meet the goal of the amendment, which is to, one of the things that happened with the first couple of amendments is it took into consideration proportionality, which is the percentage of vote when you look at statewide races across the state. It also took into account compactness, which means keeping like communities together. Richland County, as an example, is one district as a state house district. And the reason that it is one district is because of the compactness requirement in the current amendments. This new amendment does away with all of that. It puts in place a 15-member person, first 15-member board commission that will make all of these decisions, and none of those individuals will be elected, nor can you as voters or citizens hold them accountable. They cannot be questioned. You cannot call them, email them. The only time that they can be addressed is if they are in a meeting in Columbus to talk about the redistricting. And that's not how our government is. We are a representative form of government. I am there because you all elected me to represent you in Columbus. And this commission would not be elected. They have an open checkbook. As a legislator, whatever they say, whatever they set their salaries at, whatever they set their budget to be, we as legislators can't question it, we just have to approve it. And that's not who we are in this country. This is about accountability and representation. Therefore, I would urge everyone to vote no on this constitutional amendment.
Thank you. Tim, thoughts on State Issue 1?
Well, I have to say, how much accountability is there in politicians who are drawing their own districts to ensure that they are always reelected? The argument that, these 15 citizens who have been selected for this commission aren't accountable, no more so than the unaccountable politicians who will wield current redistricting to their benefit. So the amendment being put forward isn't, it's to replace the previous 2 amendments because the previous 2 amendments failed to live up to what everyone thought they were voting for. So this is still in the same intent, same purpose as the previous amendments. It is just basically to close remaining loopholes that have been used to abuse our redistricting system. How it is now, you have a political commission of politicians who, yes, are elected, but they are drawing districts for 6 to 10 years, depending on how they are voted on. So their accountability is very limited when they're drawing districts for 10 years, and all of those people are going to be term limited by then. So, and there is still, government elected oversight in that. With the amendment as proposed under issue 1, elected officials appoint the board that selects the bipartisan judges that become the screening committee for the citizens. Yeah, it's a few extra steps, but there is still democratic accountability, and it's built to, resolve the issue of the fact that we do have gerrymandered districts still, despite the last 2 amendments. And, that's clear from the fact that, Republicans got, 56% of the vote, but in our state legislature, they have, 60, 70, 80% of the seats. So we do have gerrymandered districts. I don't think this is a perfect solution, but, gerrymandering for me, the real way to address it is through vigorous political participation. It really only works if, you only have 2 political parties and everyone votes pretty much the same way year after year. So the gerrymandering, politicians have the data to say, hey, this person's going to vote this way, so we're going to put them in this district. If you throw that into chaos with a new political party and some new ideas, get people to change their votes, it really doesn't matter. So I'm yes on issue 1. I think it makes slight improvements. It, creates a little more accountability, puts our candidates maybe actually having to run in competitive races once in a while. But ultimately, what we need to do to solve this problem is get involved, get engaged, and run real candidates and build real political opposition in Ohio and across the country.
Thank you. Now, Tim, this question for you. You are a write-in candidate, and I think we quoted you in a story, I think yesterday or today, and you kind of openly said, you don't think you're going to win. You've said that you're running to offer ideas. So based upon that, give me the biggest 2 ideas that you would like to see enacted in the state legislature.
Wow. Biggest 2 ideas. So I'm not really, so I am a big ideas person, but I also believe that real progress comes from lots of small ideas implemented at many different levels. So honestly, when I say I'm running to bring ideas, part of that is not just to the state legislature, but I believe political campaigns are an opportunity to talk to people, organize ourselves, share ideas, and get people on the same page. So it's not just about, what the state legislature does. It's, I want to galvanize people in Richland County to say, hey, things aren't working at the local, county, state, national level, and some of that is the government failing to step up, but some of it is us failing to step up. So some of those ideas are more, hey, we are actually more powerful than we think we are. We actually have way more control over our lives, our city, the economy than we think we do. It's not some far-off person making the decisions. It's all of us, and the fact that, it's so divided, that we're so apathetic, that allows us to kind of ignore our own responsibility and our own power. So when I say I'm running on ideas, it is more ideas, culturally to spread throughout everything. But, if I'm given the opportunity to talk about some big ideas for the state legislature, I really am into expanding, I guess, simplest terms, expanding the Ohio Third Frontier program. I am always been supportive of a really big technological investment fund in Ohio. I the more money, the better. I'm going to say several billion because, you know, when you, Ohio, Richland County, Mansfield, I have always thought we have just incredible potential to be an economic juggernaut, a technological juggernaut. We have so much diversity of industry and, you know, research and universities to support that, and really great people whose potential is wasted. So we need to create a big innovation fund that will invest in people, ideas, technology, startups, new businesses, and really support that with an understanding of how it all connects to our larger local, state, and global economy. So, yeah, first idea, big innovation fund. Second idea, because I think I'm taking a little time, so I'll be a little quick. Marilyn John has said that energy is a big focus. I agree, energy should be a big focus. It is one of the main limiting factors to economic growth. The more cheaper, cleaner, more accessible energy you have, the more you can do. So I would like to, let's say, push us along to investing in, for these purposes of a single idea, small modular nuclear reactors. Let's invest in the nuclear technology industry. I do think that solar, you know, Toledo, Ohio, we have some of the largest solar manufacturing in North America, some of the largest outside of China. We should really be investing in that more. But still, ultimately, nuclear is kind of our future.
Thank you. Marilyn, you're seeking re-election. What do you think are the best things you've done for Richland County voters the last 4 years, and what are the biggest challenges that still face the county and you in office that you haven't been able to solve yet?
So the main role of a state representative is really to advocate for our communities. And there's a couple different ways that we can do that in Columbus. If there is needed legislation, as an example, we can draft legislation and help it through the process. An example of a piece of legislation that was brought to me by a constituent here that I think would be impactful and I continue to work on is within the foster care system. My sister and her husband were foster parents, and so I have had a lot of experience through them in that system. And foster children, if they age out of the system and the foster parents that they live with are not willing to put them on their auto insurance, then they can't get a driver's license. And when you think of an 18-year-old graduating from high school, going out into the world as an adult on their own without a driver's license, that's a huge impact and negatively on them. And so that was brought to me by a local constituent as something that she felt would be really helpful. And so I've met with lobbyists and other elected officials to talk about that, to see what we could do and where that might fit. So that is one example of advocacy when it comes to passing legislation. There's also advocacy when it comes to maybe a community project and not being able to, needing funds for a community project. So if anybody is familiar with Plymouth, there is a railroad bridge up there that closed a little over a year ago, and it has closed the main road going through the village. And it's been a problem for the schools, it's been a problem for safety, the safety personnel to get from one side of the track to the other side of the track if there's an emergency. And so I received a phone call from Mayor Fryman and said, look, we cannot afford to replace this bridge. It's a couple $1 million. We just don't know what to do. We don't have the funds. Can you be of help? And I was able to bring in individuals. Senator Romanchuk attended a meeting. The other interesting part of this is Broadway in Plymouth sits right on the county line. And so we had two different representatives 2 different senators, 2 different sets of county commissioners, 2 different county engineers to all bring together. And so I was able to help coordinate that, getting a whole lot of elected officials who could potentially bring resources to that problem that they were having, and look and see what can we do to help fix it. I was able to bring the state of Ohio up, and they were able to find funds through a grant program with the Ohio Department of Transportation, and now the Village of Plymouth is working on replacing that bridge, and it's all our tax dollars. My advocacy is just bringing those tax dollars back to Richland County. So that's another idea as far as a community project that I've been able to work on over the last couple of years. And then the other way to advocate is sometimes there's just things that happen in a resident's life. Maybe they're trying to connect with somebody at the state, and they just are having problems making that right connection. I've been able to help many people get those connections that they need. And I'll give an example. There's a young woman who had a health concern a few years ago, and as a result of the health concern, she lost the tips of her fingers. Well, and this was when she was in high school. And so she did not have a fingerprint. Well, she wanted to she's going to school to become a teacher. And if you're going to get your teacher's license in the state of Ohio, you have to pass a BCI test, which requires a fingerprint test. Well, she doesn't have fingerprints. And she was struggling to find people. I mean, that's a kind of a unique situation. And so I was able to connect her with the state attorney general's office, who runs the BCI, and they actually met. Her and her parents came to Mansfield and met with General Yost, and she was able to explain to him, this is what I need. And he was able to help her. He better understood exactly what needed to be done, and he was able to help her get her teaching license so that she could just be a substitute teacher. And that's just one of many stories of things that I've been able to help with over the last 4 years that I'm really, really thankful that I was in a position to be able to help them. Some of the areas that I think we need to continue working on, energy, as Tim mentioned, is an area that is very concerning. We consume more energy than we produce, and so that's on a lot of our minds in Columbus. What can we do to address that situation? Even in the realms of agriculture. I was attending a Farm Bureau dinner recently, and they talked about how their use of energy is so much higher now, even in the area of agriculture, than it was 50 years ago. We don't think of agriculture maybe as a big energy user, but they are becoming more and more of a big energy user, and we need to be addressing those things. So, but another area is workforce. It has been an issue for a long time. It continues to be a concern. And so what can we do to address workforce issues? In my opinion, we need to start talking about workforce with our young people younger and younger. And the schools are beginning to, or have been addressing that over the last few years, even as early as elementary school, talking to our students about their dreams and what they might have in store. I started a program when I was the mayor of Shelby called Leader Richland, which brings our junior high students to our local campus, and they talk about workforce. They get to see what it's like to butter a brick if they want to be a bricklayer. They get to meet with engineers and owners of companies. They get to talk with, we've even had yoga instructors in, because we need individuals that have talents of all different types to be able to come in and work in Richland County. And we also need to be able to attract those young people to stay here. So what can we do as far as workforce, starting younger and younger, but then also helping our businesses to have a workforce that is trained to deal with incoming technologies. And so the state of Ohio has a tech cred program that has been very successful over the last 4 years. And what can we do to, as a state legislator, how can I impact that? Make sure that we have enough money in the budget to help the businesses with their training needs. So those are some of the things that I've worked on and some of the things I want to continue working on.
Thank you. This question will be for both of you. I read a story in the Ohio Capital Journal back in August, and it talked about 41 million members of Gen Z are going to be able to vote in this election across the country. And one of the topics of interest, I think it was fourth on the list, was gun violence. It's an important topic, especially here in the city of Mansfield. We had a record number of gun homicides in 2023. As our county's representative in Columbus, what can state lawmakers better do to address this issue? And Tim, we'll start with you.
So, once again, you know, let's say, I ran as a libertarian in 2018. I'm not a libertarian, but I do understand and the nature of, you know, our problems as emergent from our culture and our society and people. So I don't start with trying to resolve problems from the angle of, you know, what legislation can we pass? It's more like, you know, what can we do to engage our community and, you know, bring people together and show, let's say, leadership. So if, you know, you really want to address the problems of gun violence and violence in general in Mansfield and really across the country, it's going to require engagement at the local level. It's going to require us to, you know, step up and talk to each other more and kind of rebuild those bonds of community that in different times would keep us together and allow us to know when something is wrong in our neighborhoods and try and get ahead of those problems before they turn to something deadly. If you wanted a state, you know, bill, piece of legislation that could do it, establishing groups that can actually, it requires continuous input of time and energy, which from volunteers, you're not always going to be able to sustain that long term. So basically create funding to have neighborhood peacemakers essentially. But really we have to address this more holistically. We have to create some leadership from our representatives to say, hey, you know, our country is being divided. How can we bring it together? So for me personally, as a representative, I would actually spend a lot of time in the district working with people, engaging people, and saying, hey, let's build a organization, let's build a culture that can, you know, combat violence from the ground up, because that's where it's got to start. I do believe strongly in political organizing as a tool for changing the culture. So for me, the next couple of years are going to be actively trying to do that by building the Forward Party in Ohio and locally to, you know, try and bring people together, have those conversations, and then keep us engaged, have civic engagement constantly that says, hey, let's solve our own problems. Let's, you know, be our neighbor's keeper. Let us do what needs to be done to save lives and protect the people around us and try and build a stable, strong, and prosperous community. And absolutely that starts at the local level. Leadership can be helpful.
Right. Marilyn, same question for you. What are we going to do about gun violence?
So I am absolutely a supporter of the Second Amendment, and criminals are going to access guns, criminals break the law. I agree with Tim. Solving the issue of violence in our youth starts at the local levels. It starts about having conversations. It starts about building strong families. It starts with having fathers in the home and mothers in the home. It starts with education. It's all of those things that we do as a community. And we can look in Mansfield and Richland County and say, what do we need to be doing better? Because we have experienced gun violence amongst our youth here. And I do think it is about educating them on what the opportunities are ahead of them. It is educating them on conflict resolution. Carl, you talked about the ability to go online and complain. We can all do that. Maybe what we should be doing and what we should be encouraging our youth to do, and starting off by setting the example, is the first thing. Before you hit send, before you hit post, think about what you're putting in writing. Think about who you're going to impact by what you're saying. Think about the person that you are getting ready to attack, if that's what you're going to do. And who else is going to be reading that? And the example that is setting for our young people and how we deal with conflict. I have friends that are on both sides of the aisle. I, in Columbus, have been able to sit down and talk with my Democratic colleagues and say, can you help me understand this? Because I really don't get it. And have good conversations, shake each other's hand, or hug each other at the end, and still be friends and colleagues at the end. We need to be setting the example of what that looks like as leaders in our community, and helping our young people to understand what conflict resolution is about and what it looks like. And I agree with Tim. I don't think there's a piece of legislation that's going to force that. There's just not. That's how we combat our gun violence in Mansfield and Richland County in the state of Ohio.
All right, we are running a little bit behind, so we're going to get to the point of closing arguments again. Both of you take just a minute and remind folks why you deserve their vote on November 5th, and Marilyn, we'll start with you.
Well, I'm going to follow suit, and I'm going to ask for your vote, because that's what we need to do. We need to be asking the voters and the residents for your support and your vote. I think I have established a reputation of getting things done in Richland County, and I enjoy advocating. I love advocating for you in the city of Columbus and representing you there. It's about being able to communicate with people, it's really all about relationships. And I've spent 15 years developing those relationships in Richland County, and being able to know and understand what the needs of the community here are so that I can better advocate for you in Richland County. I feel very confident in being able to continue to do that for you in the city of Columbus, and I would just ask for your support. Thank you.
Tim, you get the last word.
So it's spelled T-I-M. I am a write-in candidate. You do have to remember T-I-M, G-R-A-D-Y. Pretty simple, but you can always look it up. And I think you should vote for me because, honestly, you have nothing to lose there. And it's a good opportunity to just express yourself. But I'm not asking for your votes. I'm very realistic about my chances. This is a district that, votes about 70% Republican, which doesn't matter to me. I'm an independent, but I am a write-in, and you gotta remember to spell my name. That's difficult. So I'm not asking for your votes. What this is this is step one of trying to bring real change to our community, to Richland County, and to Ohio. And that is getting out there and saying, hey, we're building something new. We're trying to build the Forward Party in Ohio. I invite everyone to join. We meet regularly. Yes, this is just me secretly getting in here to advertise for the Forward Party. But I want people to see, it is not hard to run for office. It's hard to win, but it's not hard to run, to go out, meet people, share your ideas, listen to others, and gain a better understanding and respect for our community and the problems we all face and what we can do about it. And I believe there is so much we can do about it in and out of office. We can organize locally. I think, in Mansfield, and in Richland County, we haven't had, alternative perspectives on economic development really shared. It's very one-sided, invest lots in downtown and stuff. And then maybe there are other ideas out there, and I'd like to see those. So I'm trying to, bring people into a new party, and we're gonna run for office every year from here on out. I really want everyone to know that this should be the last year that anyone has an easy time getting elected. Every election should be competitive. Every election should require candidates to earn every single vote. We're trying to build that here, and I invite you to join me. Reach out. My name is Tim Grady, and yes, it's spelled T-I-M. Thank you, and thanks for having me.
And with that, we'll wrap up this particular conversation. I want to thank Marilyn John and Tim Grady for joining us tonight and spending time giving us their thoughts on what they would do if elected. With that, I'll toss it, please. And with that, I'll toss it back to Leah while we get ready for the final conversation with our two candidates for the Ohio Senate. And Leah, I'm going to need a couple of minutes, my charging cord, because this is going to die if I don't get it plugged in.
Experiencing technical difficulties.
Thank you,
Hold
Marilyn.
for applause. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leah. Thanks for hanging in with us. We are running about 10 minutes behind, but we want to spend some time to getting to know the two people who seek to represent Ohio's 22nd District in the State Senate. Welcome to incumbent Republican Senator Mark Romanchuk and Democratic challenger Kathy Salem. Thanks to both of you for participating tonight. I certainly appreciate it, and thanks for waiting around, and even though we're running late. So I want to start by offering both of you a chance to introduce yourselves. Take a minute if you would. Kathy, we'll start with you. Introduce yourself to Richland County.
Yes, I'm new to Richland County in many ways, and I have 3 counties, as Mr. Romanchuk also does. And this is how I feel. Every act of caring has a ripple-down effect, touching many lives, and I care. And this is why I am running. I've always been a trailblazer. I am 81 years old, and I have worked in many different aspects. I have been the one of 3 women in classified advertising at the Cleveland Plain Dealer when it was the 11th largest newspaper in the United States. At 46, I quit that job and went and got a full scholarship at Case Western Reserve and graduated. Then I worked up on the Hill during the time of Russ Konkowski, Foley, Hyde, Jesse Helms, and Mitchell. I have also created a life skills class as a volunteer at Decker Family Development in Barberton, Ohio 30 years ago, and I taught welfare mothers life skills. When I left, they hired 2 people. I was also very active in raising money for the Jewish Community Center in Akron, Ohio, which is where I lived. About me, I do care. I've always cared. I'm honest. Anybody who would know me know I'm honest. I have the greatest integrity, and I cannot be influenced by big money. And I will represent my district, and how I'll do that is in each one of my counties have a city, and I will have a representative there every week for a day and a half to hear. My door will always be open, my phone can always ring, and I always get back. I did forget one really big thing. I own a recording label, and I record very famous jazz musicians, and I didn't realize until about I started running for this election how big my label is and how well known we are. I have certain issues that are very concerning, and some of it is the disenfranchised people in my counties. And I can discuss that later on. And I have some goals that I want to work on, many things: healthcare, transportation, information on better healthcare, skilled labor. My lady before us, the Congresswoman, she talked about early education, and I am very big on early education at starting at 3-year-olds, and we should provide daycare for them so that the mothers and the fathers can go to work. There are places that do not have grocery stores in this city, and they have no clinics, healthcare. There is no place to get a baby delivered in Ashland or in Richland counties. You have to travel far. And these are my things that I worry about and hope to work with both sides. Once you learn to work in Washington, D.C., you learn how to work both sides. And I have friends in Congress and friends at the Senate that I've known for years, and I will work on both sides of the table to get our goals taken care of.
Thank you, Kathy. Hopefully there's a couple of questions I can still ask. I appreciate it. Sure. Mark, take a minute and introduce yourself to Richland County.
Thank you, Carl, and thank you to Richland Source for having us tonight. And thank you, Mr. Allred. I see you hidden there in the audience as well. So, and thank you to my opponent here, Ms. Salem. Thank you for running, and thank you for caring, and I wish you all the best. So I was born in Richland County. I was graduated from Ontario High School, and after graduation, I attended college and earned an engineering degree, and went to work for Hughes Aircraft Company located in Los Angeles, and that was a big blessing for me for 2 reasons. One, because they were the leading technology company in the world, so as an engineer, it was a real privilege to work there. But second, I got to travel all over the world. I spent 5 years overseas, and I met my wife, who is also in the audience, so thank you, Zoe. We met in the former Soviet Union while working there, And I'm going to tell you, that was probably the best thing that happened to me. And although I enjoyed my time at Hughes, the best part was really meeting my wife. So after that, I went to Vanderbilt University and earned an MBA. I came back home and joined the family business. And a few years after that, my wife and I purchased a business. And since then, we've started a second business. And that's been now 30 years ago. I can't believe time has went that fast. But so 30 years later, we've created a lot of jobs, a lot of opportunity for Richland County individuals and people outside the county as well. So we're very proud of the work there. And I'm very lucky, again, to have Zoe, because she's sort of watching the store, if you will, while I'm in Columbus every week doing the work of a legislator. So I'm very fortunate to have the opportunity to serve, and I hope I can serve one more term, then I'll be term limited out of the Senate. So hopefully we're successful in this election, and I can continue the good work. Thank you.
All right. Kathy, we'll start with you. I want to go talk about State Issue 1. You've heard the description of it. It's going to impact how boundaries are drawn for the legislative congressional districts. Give me your thoughts on State Issue 1. Why is it a good idea, or why is it a bad idea?
Well, something needed to be done because we are gerrymandered, and I am a victim of it in this election. It's a very Republican area, and I'm a Democrat, and it's been moved around and changed over the years. And something needs to be done because we have to be able to have both sides of the community heard. We are a two-party country, and we need to hear both sides. And at this point, it's very difficult to hear both sides. So something has to be done. Will this be the fail-safe, wonderful thing that we would like? We don't know, but it's a good experiment as far as I'm concerned, and we have to see if it works.
Thank you. I should have pointed out at the beginning, and you kind of alluded to it, Kathy, but I should make it clear. This district is Richland, Ashland, and Medina counties. I didn't point that out from the beginning,
Yes.
so I apologize for that. But Mark, State Issue 1, good, bad?
Well, I'm against Issue 1. I will encourage all of your viewers tonight to vote no. And why is that? Well, I believe in the founding principles of this country, and one of the basic principles of our form of government are checks and balances. And for 222 years in this state, we've believed in checks and balances, where there is a direct tie between the voter and the individual making decisions on their behalf. That accountability piece is extremely, extremely important. And let me take you back to 2014, when we had this debate in the legislature. So in 2014, there's two ways an initiative can get on the ballot. One, the legislature can put it on the ballot, or two, citizens can put it on the ballot. In 2014 and 13, when I first took office in 2013, the topic of conversation was the districts were gerrymandered. And if you recall looking at the districts, they were some very, very odd-shaped districts because they had been gerrymandered. There was even a district that followed the shoreline of Lake Erie called Snake on the Lake. The voters said to us, fix that. Will you fix that? The legislature then voted to put two initiatives on the ballot. One was passed in 2015, the other in 2018 that Marilyn mentioned earlier. And it was bipartisan. It was nearly unanimous vote by Republicans and Democrats that this would fix the problem. So the two initiatives went to the ballot. They were passed overwhelmingly. And that is the system we now have in place. With Issue 1, if it passes, the system that was put in place basically said, we're going to stop gerrymandering by making you respect county lines, city lines, and township lines. You could not split those, only in weird circumstances and population areas where you had no choice but to split them because there was such a large population. So we're talking Cuyahoga, Franklin, Hamilton County, and a few other places around the state. So that cut down on gerrymandering because the map makers had to respect those lines. If issue 1 passes, those lines will not be respected, and you will go back to these very, very odd-shaped districts, which will require gerrymandering. For that reason, Carl, I'm against issue 1.
Thank you. I mentioned earlier a story that I read in the Ohio Capital Journal talking about 41 million members of Gen Z being able to vote across the country. One of the things they talked about most in a survey they did with these younger voters is money. Money is on their minds. It cited a study from Tufts University that said their biggest economic issues were inflation, cost of living, and jobs that pay a living wage. What could you do as a member of the Ohio Senate to address those issues? And Mark, you go first this time.
Well, the economy and opportunities, creating opportunities have been a priority for me. When I took office in 2013, we were still reeling from the 09-08 recession. The state was in bad shape with regard to its finances. That has all now been fixed. Third parties around the country tell us that our finances are the best they've seen like in 40-plus years, so that part's been fixed. But the other way we have wanted to prime the pump, get the economy going again, is through tax policy. And we've massively cut taxes. And that has allowed more of the money that people earn to stay in their own pockets. So that in itself will help individuals who maybe don't feel like they have enough money. Inflation. Inflation is not something that was caused by the state of Ohio. Because of federal policy, we now have these headwinds that are facing every state, including Ohio, that have really put us behind. And under our policies, we saw real wage growth go up. And again, it was very low inflation, so it was a little bit easier to overcome that low inflation with some wage growth. Today, that's flipped. Because of the inflationary times we live in, the wages are not keeping pace. So we need better policies from our federal partners, and that's something that we advocate. We can only advocate for that. There's nothing we can do about it other than advocate to our federal representatives. But so that would be number 1. But again, a big priority has always been on the economy and getting it moving and getting us up to a point where everybody has opportunity. That's what will increase wages. The more we do with that, the more the wages will go up. Unfortunately, during these inflationary times, it's a very difficult time to be living through.
Okay, thank you. Kathy, same question for you. What do we do to address these issues that the Gen Z residents and really everybody is talking about? Inflation, cost of living, and jobs that pay a living wage.
Well, I think I'm going to talk about my district because I am not a politician and I've never been involved in politics. So I could only talk about what I know and what I could work with. And that is being very involved in the businesses that we have already and making sure that they know that we support them, both with tax issues, both with good wages, both with working conditions. And this will bring other industries in and provide opportunities here for people to want to work here. As far as a living wage, I'm a very pro-union person, and I think that the unions need to have more control over the wage situation and making sure that their workers are getting a living wage. I support, new growth and new roads and new public services, like better transportation for the disenfranchised, and this will provide jobs and good wages. And working with industry to attract these young people and make them feel secure.
Thank you, and we'll stay with you on this one, Kathy. You're making your first venture into politics, doing it at a fairly high level. After You know, it's always good to hear somebody that was working in the print newspaper business at the same time I was. You were at a much larger paper than I was, but at this point, why did you decide to run for the state senate, and what have you learned during the campaign so far?
Oh my gosh, well, I didn't quite decide. I was drafted by the Democratic Party while I was baking Christmas cookies in December. And I got a text, and my daughter was there, and she said, "Mother, they want you to run for a political party," and we're thinking dog catcher or something like that. And she answered yes, and then I got a phone call, and then Simon Dallas from the caucus called me and said, "We'd like you to run for state senator." And I said, "Who?" I had no idea what I was getting into, other than I know I care about people and I work very, very hard. If I win, I will work very hard, and I'm very dedicated to whatever I do. Being a senator, my children said, "You better get a YouTube, Mother, and find out what it is to work as a senator in Columbus, because you sure don't know." And I don't know, and I will take a lot of guidance and counseling, and I will follow a lot of instructions. But I run a big business, and I've done a lot of charity work, and I've raised a lot of money, and I know how to work with people, and I care about being elected. I will care about you.
Thank you. Mark, you've been in Columbus now for a while, the Ohio House, State Senate. Give me the one or two things that you're most proud of, and what's the one or two biggest challenges from the time you went down there today that you really wish you could have found a way to solve?
Well, most proud of Ohio's position among other states. We benchmark ourselves with other states economically, and when I got there, we were around 48th in the country. We were fighting for last place with the state of Michigan. Today, we're in the 20s, 30s. We just saw a ranking that came out by CNBC that has Ohio now ranked 7th for business friendliness and 2nd for cost of doing business. Those are very important measures, because businesses won't invest in our state if they don't think that the government is business friendly. Number one, and they won't invest in our state if they think the cost of doing business is too high. So today, we're 2nd in the country. I am extremely proud of that. And one of those things that, with regard to something that I haven't been able to get done, is I've done a lot of work in the energy space. Our electricity costs are decent when we compare ourselves with other states, but they're likely on the rise. And I've been trying to get some changes made to the way we set our rates that we all pay on our electric bills. That's been a very difficult thing to get done. I've been working on it for a long time. I'm not going to give up, but I hope, Carl, that maybe if I'm reelected in the next 4 years, I can make some progress. Sometimes I feel like I can get my colleagues to go along, and then other times it doesn't look like it's going to happen. So I will continue to work on lowering everybody's electricity rates. And the second thing that just more recently popped up is this idea about property taxes. So we've all been hit with increased property taxes due to appraisals going up. So we're looking at 2 different proposals in the legislature to try and smooth that out a little bit. One would expand the homestead exemption. One of the things about the homestead exemption that we have to take into account is the state then fills those holes. So when the local governments don't receive all of the money they thought they were going to receive, the state steps in and makes them whole. So, and then the other way is to smooth out, instead of having an appraisal where you have a large increase, smooth that out over a 3-year period. So local property taxes are just that. They're local. They're decided by you at the ballot. It's nothing I ever vote on. It's something we all vote on at the local level. So I just remind you of that, but I hope we can address the property tax issue, and maybe it even gets done here before the end of the year. We'll see.
Thank you. Now, both of you have spoken about the importance of the availability of health care for residents. Mark, you're the chair, I believe, of the Medicaid Committee down in Columbus. Kathy, you've talked about improving healthcare access in rural areas and inner cities such as Mansfield's own North End. What will each of you do in Columbus to improve accessibility of affordable healthcare in this district? And Kathy, we'll start with you.
Well, I have this dream of having mobile services. If you drive out in the countryside here, which I had never done until I started running for Senate, people live very far from their health care. And so I have this idea, and there is one experiment going on now, that you have a nurse practitioner, a physician's assistant, or even a doctor that has a van with basic health care services. Like if you need your blood drawn, do you have to drive 35 miles to get your blood drawn? Do you need your blood pressure checked on a regular basis? You cut your finger and so forth. I have this dream of this mobile service, and I would like to work on that. There are places that we need to have neighborhood clinics that you can get to very easily, not 35 minutes in a car, and if you don't have a car, is there a service that will pick you up and take you to the clinic? There are several that are available in other places that I would investigate here in Ohio. So that is my dream of having some health care, because I read an article in the Akron Beacon Journal that the mortality rate or the longevity of someone living in the countryside is 10 years less than someone who lives where there is a city healthcare situation. So that's what I would like to see, is more clinics that are around and mobile healthcare.
Okay, thank you. Mark, same question.
Thank you. So we already have mobile clinics in the state of Ohio. Some of our Medicaid private insurance companies provide those already. They've actually been to the State House, and we've all toured them and got a chance to view what they look like. And we also, the state of Ohio supports a mobile crisis unit that goes out during children's when they're having a mental health crisis. So we have some of that already happening in Ohio. And with regard to Mansfield, we have seen an incredible increase in access in healthcare, and we can contribute that to the Third Street Clinic, which is an FQHC, a federally qualified health center, which if you talk to anybody in Columbus, I'm probably one of their biggest supporters in Columbus with regard to FQHCs. And they've done an incredible job. There's one not too far from here at the 5 Point district, so 5 Point intersection rather. And Marilyn and I, Representative John and I just obtained $350,000 for the new clinic that the Third Street is developing in Shelby. So we've increased health care here. There's many ways to do that. You can do it with brick and mortar. We've also done it by allowing the authority of physician's assistants and APRNs to do more. That some of the mundane stuff that doctors do, we've given them more authority. I just had some legislation passed just a few months ago to do that. I just had another piece of legislation pass a few months ago that gave more authority to our pharmacies. So today you can walk into a pharmacy without an appointment, and if you need a vaccination, especially for your children, you can now do that at the pharmacy. We've been doing it under federal authority, but we've now extended that to a permanent situation. So there's a lot of ways to do that. We just came off of a budget with historic increases for Medicaid reimbursement. So that will expand access. It will hopefully expand doctors and dentists who want to provide Medicaid services. So there's a whole different host of things you can do. We've been doing many of those in Ohio, and we'll continue to do that as long as the need is there.
Thank you. I have some more things I wanted to cover, but I do want to respect people's times. We're about 10 minutes after 9, and I promised some folks, especially people who traveled all the way from Medina,
Thank
to
you.
be with us tonight. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up, and we're going to give both of you a chance to kind of make your final pitch. And Mark, we'll start with you and we'll finish with Kathy. What's your final message to voters why they should vote for you on November 5th?
Well, thank you, Carl, and again, thank you, Ms. Salem, for joining us tonight. Thank you. Thank you to everybody here and to all your viewers. I've been in the legislature now 12 years, and some people might see that as a negative. I see that as a positive. Why? Because I know how to get things done. I have, over the years, got a lot of things done, and I know how to do that. And I'm in senior positions now. So once you've been there for a while, you become more senior. You get to chair different committees that make big decisions. So I have a senior position now and can really drive policy. And if you're interested in a strong economy, one that Ohio can be proud of, one that we can say we're now in the top 10 in the country, our goal is to get in the top 5. I think we're on our way. We've developed a caucus in Columbus called Business First. It's the largest caucus of any caucus in the legislature, and our focus is on business and getting our economy rolling. If you have an interest in continuing that progress we've made, I believe I'm your guy. I've been in business 30 years. I've created a lot of jobs, and I know how to get that done. So I hope I can earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Kathy, you get the final word of the evening.
Well, thank you very much, and thank all of you, and thank you, Mr. Romanchuk. I've enjoyed the evening very much. So, Mr. Romanchuk seems to know all the things that I have thought about running here, so if you vote for me, I'll be glad to follow through on a lot of the things that he has done already, and it'll have a new, fresh look at everything. I am a hard worker. As I always say, there's no advantage to being short, but there is an advantage to working hard, and I will work hard. And I'm not easily intimidated, and if I make up my mind I want something, I get it, and I want to know about you and what's happening here in Mansfield, Ashland, and Medina, and I hope I have your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy. And with that, we will wrap up our final candidate conversation of the night. Thanks to both Mark Romanchuk and Kathy Salem for joining us. I thank all of you who are here in person and online for your kind attention. And with that, I'm going to stop talking and pass it back to Leah to wrap up tonight's Richland Source candidate conversations. Thank you both very much.